Let's now unpack the final rallies and also look at the youth voice in these upcoming elections. Joining us is Busi Seabe, who's a social justice activist, to help us unpack this theme. Busi, a pleasure to have you on the program this afternoon. Firstly, considering the high level of youth disengagement in politics, what do you believe are the main reasons that young people are not really registering to vote in the numbers that we'd like to see?
Thank you for having me. I think one reality is the fact that youth have not been able to identify themselves with many of the political parties that have been around for, years to come. We have recently gotten new political parties like Rise Mzansi, like the Patriotic Alliance, like Action SA, Busa, and also the new party with Duduzane Zuma, which presents young people with even more options. And we are seeing independent candidates as well running for elections, which should inspire young people to participate in their democratic right to vote. As it currently stands at the moment, there are about 11.8 million youths between the ages of 18 and 39 years old that are registered to vote this year. So it should be particularly interesting to see how all 11.8 million young people are going to vote in these upcoming elections.
But how do you think political parties can effectively engage the youth, but also address their specific concerns to really encourage this higher voter turnout in these upcoming elections?
At the moment, what we are seeing from young people is that young people are engaging with one another with regards to who particularly to vote for. So there are conversations around the manifestos that are currently out, that are happening on social media platforms like TikTok and Facebook, where young people are engaging with one another and lobbying each other, and also running campaigns of their own to encourage their fellow citizens to be able to vote. And one conversation particularly that is very dominant amongst young people is regarding the recent data that came out about South Africa being the highest income inequality in the world, with a Gini coefficient of around 0.67%. And what that means is essentially that young people are beginning to understand that South Africa is the most economically unequal country in the world, as a difference between the wealthy and the poor in the country has been increasing steadily since the end of apartheid in 1994. So young people are now retracing their steps and also looking at the past in order to inform their future. And one of the biggest issues that we're having, apart from the abusive relationship that we are all in as a country with the ANC government, is the fact that, under the current administration, we have seen that our labor has become worthless under, the current administration's watch. And what that essentially means is that 80% of the population has been reduced to near slavery, while the settler minority's wealth since 1994 increases. And these are the realities that young people have become accustomed to and are waking up to, and the kind of consciousness that they are, privy to, especially since using social media as an instrument to be able to communicate and campaign. So what we're seeing at the moment is that the conversations that young people are having are particularly around the promises that many political parties have mentioned in their manifestos. They are increasingly deliberating and thoroughly engaging manifestos, which is providing for conducive conversation, and is also to a large extent dealing with the issue around voter apathy. Because one of the issues around voter apathy and why young people are not voting is because they haven't had platforms to engage political parties and manifestos, or to have conversations amongst themselves around the future that they envision as a collective, as young people in this country, for South Africa. And we are beginning to see young people actively engaging in politics because they understand the fact that politics is not just about a particular political party or about government or the national parliament, but it is about the food that you eat, the clothes that you wear, are all informed by politics. And this is the reality that young people are becoming accustomed to. Yeah. And there are conversations that are happening in families and homes where young people are now having conversations with their elders, with their parents and grandparents around the legacy of the ANC, around what the offerings of different political parties. And there's a debate currently happening on who is the best political party to vote for and what direction should young people go in. And of course, young people will go in a direction that serves their self-interest and also promotes the kind of equality economically that is required in order to address, these economic inequalities that we currently have.
Let's clarify that last point that you make. In your experience, what role do social issues like unemployment, education disparities as well, and even violence play in really shaping young people's political participation?
As I mentioned, politics is not necessarily about, government. It's not necessarily just about governance, but it influences every aspect of our lives, from the food that we eat, the clothes that we wear, the kind of communities and environments that we live in, and the education that we receive. And what we're finding now is that young people have begun to interrogate, the consciousness of the education that they're receiving, the curriculum that they're receiving. They are now beginning to interrogate the economy that they are excluded from, or for some that are privileged that they are participating in. They're beginning to interrogate, to a large extent, service delivery and how service delivery ultimately impacts their ability to actively participate in the economy. They're interrogating employment opportunities, educational opportunities, and they're looking to find a government that will be able to cater to both their needs and their wants, and also to be able to, accommodate the new growing age that we have now entered into, which is considered to be called the fourth industrial revolution. We're looking at how we've been able to actively survive within the third industrial revolution, and how we're migrating into the fourth, and what that means for young people, what that means particularly for them accessing economic opportunities and having food on their tables, and being able to be not only employable but also have the skills necessary to be able to self-actualize as individuals.
Busi, can you elaborate on successful strategies that you've noted, or even initiatives that have mobilized young voters in the country to really come out in their numbers, and also assisting them on how they can be, or how they can apply to take part in these elections?
At the moment, what we are seeing, and this is particularly just on social media, and also some things that are happening on the ground, is that young people are engaging in pocket conversations, door-to-door campaigns. We've seen that the ANC has started doing people's laundry and started cooking for people in their homes as a means of trying to get them to have enough time to go and not only register to vote, but also have conversations around manifestos. We are seeing rallies that are currently happening that involve, popular artists within our communities and in society. We have political influencers, that are providing some analysis as well on social media platforms in manners that young people can be able to identify with, they can question, and that they can engage. We are having debates, we're having public town hall meetings. We are seeing, to a large extent, that even in social environments like in restaurants and in clubs, young people are having important political conversations, not only about their future, but about the present state of the country and where their positionality is with regards to that. So there is a lot of engagement that is happening. It's happening in ways that young people themselves can actively participate in. And it's also happening in manners that young people can then take and inform, articles. People are writing articles. People are creating pocket spaces, even in the church environment, where, to a large extent, we've known South Africa to have a separation between church and state. We're now seeing that even churches and other organizations as well that don't ordinarily engage in politics are encouraging young people to participate in their democratic right to vote, to look at manifestos, to engage with each other on the politics of the day and what that means for them. So we are seeing a lot of engagement. We are seeing a lot of participation from young people. And we're hoping that this participation and engagement will deal with the issue of voter apathy. We're also seeing the IEC, run a social media campaign, also run other marketing campaigns as well to provide interest for young people to come out and vote. We're seeing influencers being used and also encouraging young people to vote. So we are seeing a lot of hype around these particular elections, and it's going to be interesting to see if all 11.8 million youths between the ages of 18 and 39 will participate in these elections. Because at the end of the day, campaigning can happen, door-to-door activities may happen, manifesto launches, rallies, and town hall meetings can happen. But the question remains, will young people come out in their numbers on Wednesday to participate in their democratic right? If young people do not feel that there is a political party that represents their interest, that represents the current future that they imagine for South Africa, we might see that young people will not participate in that engagement. And this is why it is particularly important for political parties now more than ever to speak about what they are offering young people, as opposed to trying to slander one another. At this particular point in time, the slandering has gotten old. We know exactly what the issues are with the ANC. They can't implement their own policies. To a large extent, they are corrupt. We know what the issues are with the DA. It is a white monopoly capitalist organization. We know what the issues are with the EFF. It is a radical movement that not many young people are accustomed to, especially because of their border policies. There are many issues that we are aware of, and we know the issues with every single political party.
Right.
The issue and the crisis at the moment is if young people are able to identify themselves with the current political parties and independent candidates that are currently running for governance. And if we are able to identify, we will surely come out in our numbers, because there is an incentive. And the incentive is our future as young people. The incentive is us creating the kind of government, the kind of country that we want to live in, that, fights against this unequal status quo.
Unfortunately, we have run out of time for this interview. That was Busi Seabe, who's a social justice activist, giving us her perspective, especially about youth participation in these all-important elections.